Okay.
Let's rock and roll. All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started so we can be mindful of your time. Welcome to the Get a Grant workshop. So we're going to spend about an hour here together talking about the books for the book grant, talking about some project grant stuff, giving you some lesson ideas, some tips and tricks as far as inspiration for filling out the grant applications. So thank you all for tuning in this morning. Oh, I gotta get my mouse. I messed with our display settings and now I lost my mouse. All right, so here's kind of the rundown of what we're gonna do today. So we'll give you some book grant information. We'll list off all the books by category and give you a little summary of each one. If you didn't get a chance to attend a Summer Ag Institute and flip through them while we had them there, then we'll kind of give you the rundown on all the books today. And then some lesson ideas that go with each one. Talk a little bit about some previous recipients, and then we'll do the same thing with the project grant. We'll talk about some previous recipients to give you some ideas and inspiration. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions for us related to any of the books or lessons or the grant applications, you can go ahead and drop those in the Q&A box, and then we will take some time at the end to answer those questions for you. So we're going to try to keep it to an hour. Just as a disclaimer, the last couple of years, I think we've gone like maybe 10-15 minutes over. So sorry if we do. We want to be respectful of your time, but we also want to make sure that we get you a lot of good information for these grants. So I guess we'll introduce ourselves really quick. So I'm Lee Deal. I'm one of the education specialists for Illinois Ag in the Classroom. I've been here about 2 years. And previous to this, I was a high school ag teacher. So I'm excited to be here and sharing some ag education resources with a different kind of audience.
Absolutely. And I'm Stephanie Hospelhorn. I'm the other education specialist. And I've been here for about 4 years. And prior to this, I was also in education. I taught 8th grade science and 6th grade science, English language arts, and social studies. So again, super excited to be here. And then I just wanted to add that, well, and I lost it, so never mind.
Whatever
it came in mind, so never mind.
If you think of it, just let me know and we'll let you chime in. All right, so we'll start off by giving kind of an overview of the book grant. So the idea here is to get you stocked up with some new ag accurate books for your classroom libraries. So we have a whole list of books kind of in our stack that we're going to kind of go through. The basics of this is that we have 5 categories of books. 5, right? Yep. Sometimes it's 6, so I want to make sure it's 5 categories of books. Oh, there it is. It's right there on the screen. And you would select one category in here, and then you would purchase up to $250 worth of books within that one category. So we'll go through all the books in each category, and there are prices that you can find listed on the website, and we'll show you a little bit more about links and website stuff at the very end. But you would spend up to $250 within that one category on books. You could get a whole classroom set of one book. You could get 5 of each book, kind of however those prices shake out within that $250. The thing to remember is that this $250, you're actually technically getting more like $500 worth of books, because the way that we kind of work the back end of this is that once we select all of our book grant recipients, we order all of the books from the publishers at half price, and then we get them shipped en masse to our office. We fill our whole office here in Bloomington, floor to ceiling, with stacks of boxes of books, and then we unbox them, repackage them into your order, and then ship them to you. So we're purchasing them about half price from the publisher, so you're really getting about twice as much bang for your buck here. The application is currently open. It's due October 18th. We will let you know by November 8th whether you were a successful recipient of the book grant. And then basically everything kind of happens within that last month and a half before you leave for Christmas break. As far as signing the funding agreement and all of that, we'll ship the books to you, and you should have them in your hands before you leave for Christmas break. So you can kind of implement them in a spring project or unit in your classroom in the spring semester. And then at the end of the school year, you have a final grant report that you will have to sign that kind of tells us how you use the books. And just so that you know, that filling out that final grant report is a really crucial part of this grant application process. And if you fail to fill that out at the end of the school year, then we unfortunately have to put you and the whole school on a blacklist for receiving our grants in the future. It's really, really important for our funding purposes that we hear from you at the end of the process. So thank you for those of you who are in the room today who have received grants from us in the past and have been really diligent about filling those out. But unfortunately, sometimes we've got to set some guidelines and rules in place and make sure that we get those filled out. So just make sure that whenever Stephanie starts hounding you, she'll be the one that kind of hounds you from the Ag in the Classroom email when you get around to May of the end of the school year that you're filling those out. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it, unless you had anything to add on the book.
Nope, I remembered what I was gonna say
good.
is that this is being recorded, so
yes.
if we do go over the hour and you have to leave to, you know, do summer stuff and life things, it will be recorded, so you can always come back and finish it out on your own time.
Okay, awesome. So we'll launch right into it with our gardens category. So these are the 5 books that are within that gardens category. I'm actually going to talk about them individually as I go through the lesson portion of this to give you some kind of lesson ideas. So we will jump right in. So the first book in the category is The Soil in Jackie's Garden. And I wonder if our camera is mirror imaged on all of their screens too. So you're going to see all of these book titles in mirror image. So just use your imagination. But The Soil in Jackie's Garden is a new one from one of our favorite authors. Her name's Peggy Thomas. She has a lot of good books that we like to promote. And The Soil in Jackie's Garden is her newest one. It's a really good soil book. It actually reads up and down, which is fun and unique, very tops and bottoms-esque if you're familiar with that book. But it follows the story of this girl Jackie in her garden and learning about all the different things that are within the soil that helps that soil grow plants in her garden. It also reads in a cumulative style is the way they call it. So each page builds on each other and it's very repetitive. And there are also some like action words in here. So like one of the lines is these are the worms squirm that kind of are in Jackie's garden. And so even for like little audiences, like I'm thinking like pre-K kindergarten, they would love to like do the little action words in this book, and they can kind of like repeat as the book kind of builds upon itself. So a really, really fun read. Lots of good soil science information in here as well. So one of our favorite lessons that we like to pair with this, and as we kind of both go through and talk about lesson ideas, you can pair these books with any number of lessons on our website. We're just here to give you some inspiration and kind of an idea of one that we think would pair well if you wanted to use it. So one of our favorite soil lessons is Soil Your Undies. And I actually brought the undies with me today to kind of show you. But the premise of this activity is that you get a 5-pack of tidy whities, and you need cotton underwear, not any like frills or lace or anything. And you keep one back as your control, and then you bury the rest of them. You could bury them in different places. You could bury them all in the same place. That's kind of up to you. Have your students help you dig the hole, all that good stuff. Bury them and then leave them underground for a period of time. And over time, if you have healthy soil, the cotton fibers, the organic fibers of the underwear will start to break down. So we buried this pair of underwear at the end of July. And then at the beginning of October, which is about 2 months later, we dug this pair back up and they looked about like this. So you can see they're starting to break down. You've still got your elastic, but those cotton fibers are starting to wear away and decompose. And then, so we kept that out, labeled it as a date, whatever, and then left another pair in for another month. So beginning of November. So this is like basically 3 months start to finish. And this is what we had left. So all we have left is just the elastic waistband and then the stitching. So what happened, I guess the way that this works is that if you have healthy soil and your soil is healthy enough to support a microbiome and an environment where critters and microbes and bacteria can all live, then the underwear will decompose. Your decomposers and your bacteria will start to break down all of the organic fibers, and they'll leave the synthetic fibers in there, so like the plastic stuff. So that's Soil Your Undies. There's a whole lesson plan on our website that has an underwear diary, which is like the student worksheet for this activity, where students can kind of track the process of soiling their undies. So we love that activity. We promote it every chance that we can get because we just think it's hilarious, and so will your students to be able to play with underwear in school.
And Peggy Thomas loves it also, and we have sent her pairs of underwear, so it just fits perfectly with her book.
Yeah, yeah. The next one is this book, Memory Garden. And this book is about a little girl and her grandmother. And they're walking through her garden, her grandmother's garden. And the grandmother is telling stories about a garden that she had in her native country before she moved to the US. And so talking about the comparisons between this current garden that they're walking through, and then all of the memories and the cultural significance of the things that the grandmother had in her native country. So a lot of good cultural references, a really sweet story about kind of family and memories and holding tight to the things that are precious to you. So that's Memory Garden, a really, really sweet one. And a lesson that we liked just to pair with this one is Handprint Flower. It's sort of talking about the different parts of a flower, the seed, the petals, the stem, those kinds of things. But because of the handprint aspect, we thought that it brought that nice, like, cultural, personal kind of thing to it, because every student would be able to outline their own hand, and every student's hands are unique. So that's a good lesson that you might be able to pair with Handprint Flower. Or I'm sorry, with Memory Garden, Handprint Flower with Memory Garden. The next one is Every Little Seed, and the premise of this one is talking about seeds, all different kinds of seeds, lots of good science information about types of seeds and what they look like and how they function, but that the potential, the life of an entire plant lives inside of every little seed. That's like the tagline of this book. And so it's just that all about how different seeds operate and how they are kind of planted and tended and all of that, and become an entire plant just based on that little tiny seed. So a lot of good back matter in this one as well about seeds. And the lesson that we like to pair with this one is Garden in a Glove. This is a good germination lesson. You take a bunch of different types of garden seeds that your students might be interested in planting in a garden. You put them into the fingers of a clear glove, and then you give it a cotton ball, there you go. A cotton ball spritzed with water, so that you're giving those seeds what they need to germinate. So you're giving them moisture, you're giving them, like, the cotton, it kind of acts as like soil or something to kind of rub up against. And then if you put them in a warm area, then each of those seeds will start to germinate within that glove, and the students can kind of watch it happen. So we like this one to pair with Every Little Seed because it shows a bunch of different kinds of seeds and how they germinate, and you can kind of watch that process as it goes. The next one is Maxine and the Greatest Garden Ever. So this follows two friends, Maxine and Leo, and they are building this garden. They've recognized that they have a pest problem. There are a lot of different critters that are getting in and kind of destroying the garden. And so they are trying to brainstorm and build a great garden that is protected from those critters and pests, but also acknowledges them and sort of makes space for them how they can. So they're not just like trying to kick all the pests out, the critters out. They're sort of like trying to build around them and make it a great garden that can be good for a lot of different kinds of creatures. So another really good story. This is a good, like, kind of STEM kind of book, where your students are kind of learning about, we've got this problem and how are we going to solve it, and there's more than one way that it can be solved. And a good activity that we liked for this one that kind of ties back some of that STEM stuff is the Build a Bee Hotel. So this activity, they take a tin can, your students would take a tin can, they could decorate it on the outside to look like a bee, give it some wings, and then you are ultimately building a bee hotel. So you're giving it and putting a bunch of bee straws, and you could even fill it with little sticks and pine cones and twigs and things that you find around your schoolyard. And this becomes a habitat for bees to lay their eggs for the next generation of bees for the next year. So just building the process of building something that is for another kind of creature, or an insect or a pollinator or those things. So that's Build a Bee Hotel. And then the last book in the garden category is Lynn's Rooftop Garden. So this is in a series. We had another book in the same series, Logan's Greenhouse, that was in last year's book grant. And all of the books kind of follow the same premise, where the character in the story, Lynn in this case, is looking for a specific type of plant for a specific purpose. In this case, it's blueberry. She's looking to feed maybe some pet. I can't quite remember, but she wants blueberries, and she's walking through her garden. In this case, it's a rooftop garden, and she's looking at all of these different kinds of plants and deciding, is this wondering, wondering, questioning, is this a blueberry? And the answer that the book kind of gives is sort of describes the anatomy of these plants and how they differ and all those things. So you're learning about different kinds of plants while you're on the search for a certain kind of plant. So that is the premise of Lynn's Rooftop Garden, learning about all kinds of different plants. And a good lesson that we have a lot of specialty crop lessons, a lot of different fruits and vegetables and parts of a plant kind of lessons. But one that we'll highlight here is called Ins and Outs. And you get these little cards that are a couple inches kind of square. And there's 4 of them in a set. And then there's like a bunch of different fruits that are included in the set. And you're matching the name of the fruit to a picture of the entire plant that the fruit grows on, to a picture of just the fruit or vegetable, and it could be either one, and then to a picture of a really zoomed in look at the inside of that fruit or vegetable. And so it's just showing all the different like zoomed in kind of views of a certain plant, fruit or vegetable. And so you could do this activity even as like a pairing, like a group pairing activity. You could give every student a card and then they have to find their match in their group, and then that's their group that they then do another activity with. But like I said, we have lots of specialty crop lessons that are all really interactive and fun. So you could pair Lynn's Rooftop Garden with a lot of those ones.
All right, on to the insects category. So you can see all of the books we have here. We have 6 books in this category. So just like Lee, I'm going to give you a quick summary of each book and talk about one of our lessons that we have that we think pair really nicely with it. So the very first book that we have is called Carl and the Meaning of Life. And basically Carl is this worm, and he spends his entire days underground tunneling and turning dirt into soil, or turning things into soil. And then one day a little field mouse asks, why is he doing that? And he doesn't know why. And so he goes above ground on this big adventure to ask some questions to try to find his answer. And along the way, he learns about all of these other animals and what they do. And in the end, he gets to a very barren area where the soil's really hard as a rock. And that's when he learns what he does and the importance to it. And so the premise of this book is that no matter how small somebody is, they can make a huge difference, and that everybody has a place on this planet. Really a cute book, short text. As you can see, there's simple words on each page. Really great to have a real loud, really pretty watercolor style images. So our activity that we have to pair with Carl is our classroom vermicomposting, and you can do this in a variety of different ways. So on the lesson online, we have an option if you wanted to have a full vermicompost bin that you can make out of just a tote that you get from, Lowe's or Menards or something. And so we have instructions on how you can create that. Or we have the little desktop vermicomposter. So you can see a picture on the screen right now, but I also have one right here where you can see there's actually a worm crawling up right here right now. He must be Carl. He's going above ground to see what his meaning is. But you can see there's a whole bunch of worms. You can't really see, but there's a lot of different worms. There's baby worms in here. There's also some little springtails, which are a type of decomposer. And then you just have some newspaper and you just feed a little bit of, apple or whatever in there. These are 2 separate cups that you can just use for Starbucks. We both have our Starbucks here that we could recycle and use as a vermi bin. And it's super easy. These are way better than like the worm farms that you can buy on Amazon that look like ant farms, because worms really need a dark area to stay nice and dark and nice and moist. So we love this idea of just recycling cups and using 2 of them, where one of them we just put black electrical tape around here, just wound it up. It doesn't need to look pretty. We have it on the top of the lid as well. And then we have this inside cup. So when we want to make our observations, we can just pull out the cup and your students can look and make those observations. Super easy. Again, this is just a bigger size. You could use smaller cups. There's a variety of different ways that you can do this, but a really awesome activity to bring in to learn about decomposers, different types of organisms. Even with your big vermicompost bin, you can talk about caring for, living creatures and responsibility and taking care of something like a pet, and lots of different ideas that you can do with that. The next book that we have is such a cute book. It's Worm and Caterpillar, and Worm and Caterpillar are best friends. Worm just loves how they look alike, and he feels really secure with their friendship, but Caterpillar has this feeling that something's going to kind of change. This is an awesome book for our beginner readers, and it shares a really important message about friendship and accepting each other's differences, even as friends are going through changes and whatnot. So you can see right here, you can see the style of artwork and writing. So cute. Just such a fun story. So for this book, we have paired it with our butterfly life cycle to go along with our caterpillar, to look at different life cycles. Life cycles is in all of our science standards for Illinois at multiple different levels or grade levels. And so this would pair nicely looking at the butterfly life cycle. You can see on the screen there's a couple of different ways you can do it. On the lesson online, we already have one kind of printed out for our younger learners. For students who are a little bit older, maybe second grade and up, can use a paper plate and use pasta, the different types of pasta that look like, you know, the eggs and the caterpillar and all of that, and they can label them and show that order. In the same sense, you can also use your Vermi bin to look at life cycles, because you'll notice that in your bin, you'll start to see little eggs, you'll see the little hatchling worms, juvenile worms, and then to the adult worms. So this is kind of a 2-for-1 where you can look at life cycles of 2 different insects or little critters for that. The next book is Flower Talk. This is a really awesome book talking about how there's so many different plants that rely on pollinators that to help move the pollen from one flower to the next. That's how they reproduce. This is a really awesome, fun way to give nonfiction information on how flowers are actually using color to communicate or to talk to these different pollinators. And the colors, we can see normal colors, blues, reds, you know, all of that on the spectrum that is visible to our human eye. But the cool thing is it goes into depth about how different insects can see UV or ultraviolet light, and that is a huge part of the communication. So the cactus character right here is who takes us through the story. Really interesting and unique type of artwork. There's a lot of information in here. Super cute book. And so the activity that we're pairing with this is our activity called Flower Talk, where it kind of goes into multiple stages. If you can see the picture on the screen, where students are using, did we lose our UV pen?
Oh, it might have
it's
fallen
down here,
down.
fell
Yeah.
down on the floor. And so you use these little markers so that there's 3 students involved where they have the path. And so technically they are playing the role of a bee, which is really fun because bees, honeybees, will, when they go out to find flowers and come back, there's something called the waggle dance, where they use a series of circular rotations and vibrations to communicate to the other honeybees where the best flowers are. So this is kind of a play on that, the play on UV ultraviolet light using the black lights. And then also using some coding. You can do, in this case, it's coding using arrows, directional arrows. And so you could even bring it in with navigation, north, south, east, west, and all of that kind of stuff. So they would X the flowers to show their path using an invisible marker. These markers we have on Amazon, and the page that is going along with all of this stuff, every single activity that we're talking about is linked on the page, which will give you the information at the very end. And then all of anything we're talking about, like these markers, will also be linked there. So you can just click on the Amazon link. It'd be great for a project grant idea. But you use the invisible ink marker to make X's. I would pass my paper. The second person would use the black light. If you can see, there's a black light attached to the marker. They would use the black light to see the X's, and then use a regular pen to show which direction every X goes. So if it's right, down, you can see on the screen, we started that activity. They would pass the paper again and then use the directional coding, and then just a normal pen to try to match the X's in the bottom garden, and then they can see, it's kind of like a game of telephone also. Did the bottom garden match the the path of the bee from that very top garden. So a lot of different things, concepts that they can take in. And then of course, the thing on the side, the native flowers, talking about Illinois flowers for our native pollinators. And that is just a snip from our pollinator ag mag right there. The next book, I'm going to go a little out of order. We've got The Bees right here. This is a series. It's a nonfiction book. It takes you all inside the beehive. It explains what beekeepers do. And it also has information about how you can conserve and protect bee populations. Kind of goes back to the Build a Bee hotel that Lee spoke of earlier. It's kind of like your normal, like the little National Geographic magazines for kids. Nonfiction, real images and bite-sized information about that. So we've got bees. One of our favorite lessons for younger students that would match perfectly with this is our powder-powered pollinator, and it takes in consideration the actual process of pollination. And so you use a little pipe cleaner. I forgot what that was called for a second. And the pipe cleaner represents the fuzziness on bees and when they travel to each flower. So we would use a juice box as the nectar. You would sprinkle some of the cheese flakes from a mac and cheese box. And as the flower is visiting, or as the bee is visiting each flower, then the cheese gets stuck to the pipe cleaner, and you can see that that's how pollination works. So it's just a really easy way to explain pollination and a visual for those young learners. There is a little worksheet that goes along with it where you can use little macaroni noodles as commas, and then the students can place the macaroni noodles on the sentences to show where the appropriate place is for a comma. And then we also have a bee school series. Our manager, Chris Wyant, is a beekeeper, and he has a few hives, and he just takes students through the process of everything that is involved with keeping bees, the process, what they need to survive, the hives, all of that stuff. So that's a great way. You can just play it on your screen. He's talking to your students, and so it's just something you could put up on your screen and hit play. The second to last book is in the same series, nonfiction. And again, it's going to take you inside the chrysalis. It's going to talk about what butterfly keepers do. And again, teaching about conservation and protecting butterfly species. It's the same style of pictures and bite-sized information. And for this book, we think it'd be awesome to do our bag butterfly activity. Really simple, budget-friendly materials. It's just a couple of snack-sized baggies. You could just use one for our younger students. You could do 2 baggies to show the actual anatomy of the double pair wings for our older students. And then just tissue paper that you can get from the dollar store, cut up into squares or just shred it up, have a student come in and help you. And then they can place the tissue squares in the baggies, tie around with another pipe cleaner. You can see on the screen, in this case, we used orange and black tissue paper to mimic the colors of monarch butterflies. And if you are the Illinois Monarch Project, where you can track the monarch migration, there's all sorts of stuff you can do, but we don't want to forget about all of our other butterfly species and pollinators. The thing on the little square on the screen is also another clip from our pollinator ag mag to show all of the different pollinators that are here in Illinois. And then the last book in this insect category is from one of our favorite Illinois authors, Janice Harrington, who is just such a sweetheart. And this is an awesome book. It's nonfiction, it's a picture book, but it captures the life of Charles Henry Turner. He's super inspirational, not one of the most well-known scientists, although he should be. And it talks about his quest for knowledge and passion for insects and insect behavior, among many other scientific studies. There's a lot of back matter in here, which is awesome for biographies. There's source notes, archival images, all sorts of stuff. But this is a fantastic book, really awesome. There's the back matter information. And then you can see some of the drawings up here. So really awesome. And then for this, we have paired our scientific inquiry worksheet. It's a very generic worksheet that you can use for any experiment that you're doing where students are looking at the phenomenon and why that phenomenon happens and selecting what their control is, and the different variables that they're testing. So you could definitely use this for your soil undies. You could use it if you're growing plants, all sorts of different things that you can pair with the scientific inquiry activity. But this is Buzzing with Questions, and it is one of our favorite books here in the office.
Okay, moving right along to the tree category. So in this tree category, we have a nice mix of nonfiction stories and then fiction stories. And so we're going to do this one a little bit differently because really any of these books could be paired with any of our tree related activities on our website. So I'm just going to take a second to talk about all of these books one after another, and then I'll show you a slide with a bunch of different tree activities that you could hypothetically pair with any of these books. So Peach Pit Parade is like a historical fiction kind of story about a little girl in World War I. And there was a message sent. So all of the men are overseas fighting, and there was a message from the government that they needed peach pits to make gas masks for the soldiers in the war. And so she had been wondering, as her dad was off fighting, is there something that I can do to help and sort of make an impact here? And so then when this message is sent that they could use peach pits for gas masks, well, then she has her mission. And so the story of growing all of the peach trees and helping to kind of make a difference in the war in her own way. So really, really, really sweet, amazing story. And then a lot of good historical back matter in the back that talks about kind of the history of this event. So that's Peach Pit Parade. Really, really sweet story. We love that one. Another one, this is actually my personal favorite, like in the entire book grant out of all of the categories, is My Grandpa, My Tree, and Me. This was AFBF Book of the Year last year, and for good reason. So this is about pecan farming. And it's the story of a little girl and her grandfather, and the grandfather operates a pecan orchard for like mass scale. And he uses, of course, like machinery and high tech, like all of this stuff to kind of produce a whole orchard of pecans. But then when his granddaughter is born, he also plants one single pecan tree in the backyard. And so throughout the story, it talks about how he's cultivating all of these trees in his orchard, but then how he then goes into the backyard with his granddaughter and does everything by hand on this one tree. And so kind of the comparison of those two practices. And just such a sweet story. And not to give everything away, but at the very end, like I actually audibly gasped when I flipped to the last page. The little girl has a little sister born, and so the grandpa's planting a second pecan tree in the backyard to do the same thing with little stuff.
I'm getting chills right now.
So
So
sweet.
cute.
Anyway, so read this book. It's incredible. That's My Grandpa, My Tree, and Me. The next one is Nell Plants a Tree. This is, I think, yeah, this is the last one that's like more a like fiction story. The rest of them are pretty nonfiction, like kind of science heavy informational text. But this one is a story of Nell, and she is planting this tree. It's actually another pecan book. She's planting a pecan tree. And it's talking about a family and sort of goes through this journey of this family and how Nell is like taking care of this tree. She plants the seedling, she cultivates it, helps it germinate, and then she's let it as a sapling. She's doing all of this stuff to take care of it, and then she ultimately plants it outside, and the family is sort of like circulating around her as the story goes on, making memories under this tree and around this tree, and the tree becomes this like place where this family gathers. Just a sweet story about family, and then kind of relating it to cultivating a tree kind of at the same time. So that's Nell Plants a Tree, another sweet one. The Magic and Mystery of Trees is really more of like a nonfiction, like informational text. So there's a lot more words, a lot more diagrams that happen in this one. So much to say about this one, but I'll just kind of leave it as it's a more nonfiction informational kind of like reference book that you could keep in your classroom, talking all about different types of trees and how they communicate with each other and interact and exist in the environment. Trees from Haiku from Roots to Leaves is a book of haikus, groundbreaking, about trees and how how they grow, how they live, why they are important, but it's a good, could bring a lot of good poetry connections into this one. But it's a book full of haikus about trees. I'm sort of rattling these off pretty quick. As a reminder, if you do have any questions as we're going, you can throw those in the Q&A and we will make sure to answer those at the end. And then the last one is Be a Tree. And this one is actually a really sweet one about how we can encourage our students to take inspiration of like how to exist in the world from trees, and like compares our bodies or students' bodies to the bodies of a tree, and how we can stand tall and be proud and all of this stuff kind of in the same way that trees do. So it has also a lot of good information, but then talking about how each person is unique, and that we can love and appreciate ourselves kind of in the same way that each tree is unique and exists in the world. So that is Be a Tree. Okay, so let's talk about some tree activities. So we've got kind of a bunch of them that are all on this page. The first thing I'll talk about is our new Farm Bites. So this is a new nonfiction text resource that we are putting out in the last year or so. We've been rolling these out. But these are one-page snippets of information, bite-sized pieces of information about different kind of specialty crops in Illinois. So we've got a ton of topics of these on our website, of different kind of specialty crops that we wouldn't necessarily write an entire ag mag or reader about, but that we still think it's worth having information out there for students to read, or even community members, parents, whoever. But we do have some tree related ones. So I threw up the pecans and the maple. We have peaches on there as well. Christmas trees is another tree one. So we've actually got a lot of different tree topics of these. The front side of these has information about the production of that specialty crop or animal, whatever, in Illinois. And then the back side has an interview with an Illinois farmer that grows that commodity or that crop. So check those out on our website. You can find the Farm Bites under Ag Mags and Readers, and then there's a whole page of View All Farm Bites, and you can see all the topics. They're just a front and back printable resource. The next one is the Trees and Ag zine. So if you've not seen us kind of talk about and promote these zines, this is another relatively new thing we're doing. We didn't invent the concept of a zine, but we're tying that back to agriculture and creating the opportunity for you to implement these into your classroom if you would like to. So the way that a zine works is it prints on 11 by 17 paper. So this is what it would look like when it comes hot off the press. And then you do a series of folds and one cut kind of in the middle there, and then ultimately fold it onto itself and create a little booklet. So this is the beef cattle one. This was the first one that I found in the stack that we had already assembled. But you can see it ties in lots of different like cross-curricular concepts. We've got lots of English, science, even some math. This beef one had some math in it too. But it becomes a little workbook that students can do to learn more about that topic. And they put their name on it, lots of coloring opportunities. They all have outlined images so they can kind of color in as well. So Trees and Agriculture is one that we have on our website. It talks about all different kinds of fruit and flowering trees that we grow in Illinois, as well as Christmas trees. I think there's Christmas trees in there too. Cool. The next one is Reading Rings. Reading Rings is a story, or not a story, it's an activity about how we can look at the cross-section of a tree trunk to look at how old that tree was and see some different kind of life events that happened in the tree's life. So you probably know this, that you can look at a tree and see how old it is by counting the rings. You can also tell a lot about the tree and the years that it lived based on like both the thickness of the rings and then also the scars that are within the tree. And so the thicker a ring is, the more water that tree was able to access in that year. The thinner the ring is, it may have been encountering a drought or not as much water in that year. You can see scars for like forest fires or dead branches that were grown around, all kinds of different things. So in the activity, they have this page that you can kind of see projected up there where they're practicing this concept. And then they, take it one step further and they get a paper plate and they actually make a tree cookie, is actually the name of just like a slice of tree, where it represents their life. So they would draw an equal number of rings to however many years old they are. And then they could put some scars, but be careful about using the word scars. But basically you're wanting them to kind of map out or chart significant life events. So maybe they had a little sibling born when they were 3. Or their family moved states when they were 7. And so that's where I mean, be careful about calling them scars, because we don't want to portray that all those things are like negative life events, but just significant things that happened to them. So kind of a reflective activity. The next three are all related to like conifers, evergreen, hardwood trees. So comparing conifer hardiness, uses different types or different branches or needles from different kinds of coniferous trees. And sort of looking at that and seeing the differences between all of those needle styles. Pine cone adaptation experiment, you soak a pine cone in water and watch as the pine cone closes up. It happens within 24 hours.
Yeah, depending on the size of the pine cone.
Mhm. And then 3D evergreen tree is another life cycle activity where they would, we can give you the template for this little thing that you can see here, shows the life cycle of an evergreen tree, and then they would fold it and kind of make a 3D evergreen tree that talks about the life cycle of that tree. So this is a bunch of tree activities. We do have, I think, even a few more on our website that you can look at too, but these would be good. You could pair a lot of these with a lot of different books in the tree category.
Okay, so moving on to the next category, we have our books that are all focused on social emotional learning, which is a huge topic. It has been, but especially now post-COVID. And all of these books, not only do they hit on social emotional aspects, but it's also tying in agriculture, gardening, you know, very loosely related, but great things that you can still do with the book. So the very first one is Something Someday. It's, oh my gosh, I love this book. It makes me tear up every single time I read it. But this is a book that shows that even when the world or the things in the world seem like way too big for us to handle, or really bad or scary, that a little bit of hope and help from friends can make a huge difference. It's such a cute story. Especially from a kid's aspect. Our main character is a little boy, and he's kind of taking us through, like, you know, even though we're really small, we can still make a difference. And I love the illustrations. They are it's like a collage of different materials that they cut out and took pictures of, and then their faces are actually drawn on there, but really cute. You can see there's a little bit of text on each page, so it's not super text heavy, but really great messages in this book. I absolutely love this book. But a part of this is looking at focused on, you can talk about a number of different topics in your classroom, but this book specifically is looking at the amount of waste that we have, and that there's not a lot of green space in big cities. And so by the end, they're clearing away the garbage, and then they're working together to build a little community garden. And so in this sense, we have paired the Circle of Earth bracelet with this. This activity is super simple. For you know, many different age levels, where they have a little pipe cleaner, and each color bead that you string onto the pipe cleaner represents something different about our planet and how our planet is an entire ecosystem. And what I love about this is that you can see on the screen the clear bead at the very top that kind of like holds it together. It's like the hinge of the bracelet, where it's you can make it bigger or smaller for all of your students' little wrists. But the clear bead represents humans and how everything, water, soil, plants, all of that kind of stuff, all of these cycles on our planet, also we rely on that for us to live, but also we're responsible. We're the stewards of the planet to make sure to take time to protect those resources so that our population can continue for years and years and years. And so that is a really good play on the message of this book. The next book is Just Ask. This is an awesome book. It's an inclusive story that takes readers along as differently abled kids use their strengths and work together to learn about each other, but also they create this beautiful garden. So we have students who may not be able to do one task because of their abilities, but because of their abilities, they use their strengths to help work in the garden in a different way. And so it's such an awesome story story to show how even though some students may not have the ability to do the things that other students do, they still have their strengths to help on the team and make it a really awesome thing. And so each page takes you through meeting a different student with a different ability, and it gives you information, talks about it. It's just such a cute story, a great story to read, especially at the beginning of the year, and a reminder in the middle or end of the year. But this is such a cute story. What we have paired with this is Farm Boots, which we had originally made to pair with the book called Farm Boots. But in the activity, they can choose, there's like 5 different boots that they can choose from. And then they can design it to fit what they would do, their style. And then they talk about how they would use their new books or their new boots, or the work that they would do in their new boots. And so it gives them the opportunity to reflect on their strengths and how they could help in a garden or on a farm or just around the house. It could, all of those different things, and then they can color them to fit their style, their personalities, and all of that. So really a awesome activity to bring in some individuality and uniqueness. The next book is a book called Love Grows, and this is a story about a young girl who receives a plant in the mail from her aunt every single month of the year. So then by the end of the year, she has an entire garden, the aunt also sends along a little bit of information. So this book is also teaching about how to care for different plants. And these are also non-native plants. And so we're talking about, gardening centers and the idea of having house plants that may not be native to Illinois, but are still grown, and we can learn a lot from, and they're really cool and unique to look at. There's a lot of origins about the plants. It includes the common name and the Latin name of all of the plants. There's fun facts and information about how to care for them, and all sorts of stuff, which is really cute, really cute illustrations in there as well. And the activity that we have paired with this is called Growing Letters, where you just have little pieces of super cheap construction paper. This is from the dollar store. And then students can use a glue stick to draw a shape or write different words. In this case, we wrote the word love, and it could pair with, social emotional, what a kindness, all of those different words that you can use in there. Or they could write their name, or maybe some vocabulary, or just letters or anything like that, shapes, whatever you're working on in your classroom. And then once they're done with the glue stick, you just you can use those little cheap baking foil tins, put some grass seed in there, and once you got the glue on there, you'll dip it down in there and you have your grass seeds. All you have to do then is set it in some soil, water it, the paper will break down, and then you will start growing grass in the shape of what you've created. And so students, you can turn this into a science project and do a little bit of inquiry and maybe test, how much light does this need versus, or maybe you're testing water, all that sort of stuff, and then it'll grow, and they can use scissors to, mow it or cut it down or whatever. So this is just a really simple, cute activity talking about germination, growing, tying in some of those other concepts of social emotional learning. I'm getting grass seed everywhere. Okay, the next book is called Potato Pants. This is about a potato who is super excited to learn that the store, Lance Vance's Fancy Pants store, is having a sale on potato pants. He's super stoked to go get himself a new pair of pants, but he sees Eggplant, another character in there, and he had a bad run-in with Eggplant the day before, and so he's like really nervous and anxious, and then ends up not getting potato pants because he's afraid of Eggplant. Then, long story short, in his frenzy, he accidentally hits Eggplant and rips Eggplant's pants. And then in the end, they learn that both of those cases were just misunderstandings, and they learn the meaning of forgiveness and friendship. And it's just a really fun and cute story. Here's the illustrations, lots of fun, big words. And just a really cute story about forgiveness and apologizing and learning different perspectives. And sometimes something might happen to us and it was not even on purpose. It was an accident because somebody else is dealing with other things in their own lives. The activity that we've paired with this is called plant parts matching. So like Lee mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of specialty crop plants. And so the ins and outs would be kind of a precursor to this activity if you wanted to kind of branch that up. And so this case, you just have your little chart that shows the different parts of a plant, and then you have all of these different fruits and vegetables that are common that we see in our meals regularly, and they have to decide and which part of the plant that we are eating. And so are we eating the flower part? So if you're eating cauliflower, that's technically the flower of that plant. And so they would put the cauliflower into the flower category. So we've got a variety of different fruits and vegetables there. And then they would just organize those based on their understanding. There's more that goes to the activity. And then of course, learning about those different parts either before, during, or after the activity. The next and last book of the social emotional category is the story of Temple Grandin. She's pretty well known, but I'll just give a quick summary of the book. It's basically, this is the story of her and creating the hug machine. And basically, she longed to be hugged and comforted without the icky feelings that came along with just getting a hug from her loved ones. And so that really pushed her to create this hug machine. And she was on her aunt's cattle ranch, and when they put the cattle through this little chute for vet exams and whatnot, that chute kind of squeezes and presses the cattle and keeps them calm while they're getting checked out. And so she recognized that and saw that if it's working for cattle, I wonder if we could make something for people like me who want to be comforted like everybody else, but just can't shake those the feelings that they get. And so she created the hug machine or the squeeze machine to help students like that. So it's a story of her. There's all sorts of information about Temple Grandin all over the website. She is a keynote speaker at many different things, so lots of information that you can do. But what we have paired this with is the obviously the ag side of that story with cattle. A really great activity is Moo Mask, where you're just using paper plates to create a mask. There's a variety of different ways that you can make the little ear tag and talk about how farmers or cattle ranchers are creating ear tags as a way to keep track of their of all of their cattle. In this case, we have used a birthday, and so you can have them put the month and day of their birthdays. They could line up in alphabetical order, all of that kind of, or numerical order. There's a variety of different things, and then the actual activity also has some math that goes along with that if you're trying to include more math into your curriculum. And then the other part, the beautiful bovine, is a really cute activity where your students are kind of dressing up and identifying the different parts of cattle. We have a video that goes along with it that has our guest star Lincoln Wyatt, who is our manager's son, and he takes you through the entire activity. Really cute video. You can either watch it to get the materials to use that in your classroom, or you could just show the video in your classroom to show all of those different parts and whatnot. So really cute, a great way to bring in the livestock side and talking with Temple Grandin and all that. So those are our social emotional learning and agriculture books.
Okay, last category in the book grant, and then we'll talk about some examples of project grant, is our mythology and agriculture category. And typically in previous years and then in the rest of the book grant, every book, individual book in a certain category kind of can stand alone and is related to the title of the category. This one is sort of a newer concept of a category for the book grant, but we're excited about the possibilities of doing something a little bit more like this. So this is the only category in our book grant where we have like middle high school chapter book options in there. So if that applies to you and your students, then this would be the category for you. But this is sort of the book that this entire category is based around. So this is The Labors of Hercules Beale. It is the story of a boy named Hercules, named after the mythological figure. And he's in class one day in school, and he has a teacher that sort of challenges him for a project. For a project, challenges him to sort of reenact the 12 labors of Hercules or research them for a project. And so he does. And so he goes kind of on this journey, and he sort of finds himself and has lots of adventures kind of as he's on the mission for this project. There's a really, really sweet story. This is the one that has the mythological connections in this category. And then the rest of the books that we sort of paired are sort of supplemental and relate to different ideas and concepts and topics that are addressed in this book. So if you're going to do this category, this would be the main book that you would want to make sure that you get at least a copy or two of, and then the rest of them sort of play off of topics within this one. So we'll kind of walk through here. So I already talked about the synopsis of the Labors of Hercules Beale. Highly recommend it. We have all loved it in our office. We do have on our website for this book and for a bunch of other chapter books that we have recommended in the past, we do have a reading guide. So if you want to incorporate this into your classroom and do kind of a lit circle or have students kind of read along and do some class discussions, we have a reading guide that you can utilize that gives you some questions and topics to kind of talk about as you read through the book. We have a number of these, 10 or so probably on our website for lots of different chapter books, some graphic novels we've written some reading guides for that we've recommended in the past. So check out the reading guides if you are a middle high school teacher looking to incorporate some literature into your classroom. The next book in the category is Here in the Real World, and I'll leave Labors kind of here as our inspiration. So the Here in the Real World is a story about a teenage boy named Ware, and he's really interested in like knights and Middle Ages. That's kind of his passion and where he likes to spend his time researching and watching, consuming content about those things. But so he would be content to kind of just like live in his own little world and like research these things from this era of the past. But his parents want him to go to a summer rec camp. And so they send him to this rec camp, and he is not thrilled about this. But as he's here and he's trying to like escape the rec camp and the social interactions and all of that, he meets another girl there named Jolene. And Jolene is sort of in the same boat, but what she has decided to do is she has decided to turn a little plot of land that is adjacent to the camp into a garden. And so they form this friendship and this bond, and then they kind of like exist in this garden and solve problems and save the world, metaphorically speaking, through this story. So a really, really sweet story, really sweet chapter book about two friends, unlikely friends, and how they kind of meet and form this bond. A good activity or series of activities that you could form or pair with this is we have, well, specifically a STEM challenge for Design a Community Garden. So a couple of summers ago, this was our topic for our Summer Ag Institutes and kind of what we focused on. We made these STEM cards, and there's a bunch of them, and they all follow different topics that we highlight on our website and through our resources. But each one is a standalone STEM challenge in and of itself. So it gives the students kind of like a problem or a phenomenon that they should try and solve, a list of materials that they could use to try and design some project or some solution for this problem or phenomenon. And then it challenges them to go ahead and design something that sort of meets this prompt. And so one of them is to design a community garden. And so that's what we paired with this book. But we think that also the entire stack of STEM cards, the entire STEM card series would be really useful to you in your classrooms in a lot of different ways. So we have this available on our website in a number of different ways. You can download the entire STEM card series, or you can find each topic available on it on its own independently in the different topics on our website. So you can find those. If you search STEM cards, you'll get a bunch of different hits of how you can find those. The next one is Outdoor Farm, Indoor Farm, and I know we're running kind of low on time, so I'll rattle through these last few, but really just the differences between operating a farm outdoors and operating a farm indoors in a greenhouse. There's going to be a lot more already a lot more greenhouse kind of rooftop growing that's happening, and probably more so in the future as well as we continue to try to feed our growing population. So just the comparison between those two things all through this story. This is a picture book, so it's not a chapter book like those first two were. We have a lesson called Desktop Greenhouse that you build the same way that you would build the Vermi bin, Vermi cup of worms. So you would leave this one clear and then wrap the outside in electrical tape. And then you can simulate the process of a greenhouse and use this as your environment to manipulate variables in growing something in your classroom. So you could put a light in one, you could leave one dark, and then try and manipulate some germination or plant growing variables and design some new experiments in that way. So we've got a full lesson plan on the website for desktop greenhouse. Farmer Eva's Green Garden Life is a new one, the newest one from another one of our favorite authors. And it follows the story of Farmer Eva, who's sort of a local legend in her area in Massachusetts. And she has built this incredible garden, and all of the locals know her and love her. And so the author, Jacqueline Briggs Martin, kind of went and interviewed her and formed a relationship with her, and then told her story in this book. So we have loved reading this one too. It's a true story about a real person, but told in a very accessible way, entertaining way for your students. The lesson that we paired with this one is Outdoor Adventure Flip Book. This one you print in a specific way, and it gives you specific printing instructions, and then you fold and assemble it so that it opens as a flip book. And then you can take your students outside and they sort of look for different kinds of tree leaves, different kinds of flowers, look for things in the environment. And then on the back side of it actually is like a pocket that they fold together and staple so they can collect little treasures as they're on their outdoor adventure. We've got a couple different flip books in that style on our website as well. And then the last two that were in the category, I told myself I wasn't going to forget to talk about these, and then I totally did. The last two that were in the category are also tree books. And so as far as like lesson examples, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and just revisit that tree lesson slide. A lot of those tree books could be paired with these two books. Z Grows a Tree is a story of a little girl whose parents plant a Christmas tree on the day that she is born, and then they grow up alongside of each other and then ultimately harvest the tree for their Christmas celebrations. And then Big Tree is a very unique read. It's a lot of illustrations. Let me see if I can find, so like a lot of the pages are like one or two words or like really intense illustrations. So it's like a big, thick book, but it reads really quick in an hour or two. But it's a story, kind of like a fantasy sort of story of two little seeds and their brave adventure to save the world. So there's all of this like catastrophe that's happening in the environment, and they are on a mission to kind of save, to replant themselves and save the world, basically. But really, really good. This one won all kinds of different awards for the storytelling and the environmental impact and all of that kind of stuff. So that is a really, really good one as well. Okay.
Okay, so on to some examples. And I just want to reiterate that the whole purpose of the book grant is to not just be able to fill your classroom library with books that represent different aspects of agriculture, to bring more ag topics in your classroom. You know, where does your food come from? How do plants work? All of that. But also to do some sort of project to actually bring that to life. So here are just some different examples, and I'm just going to briefly go through them. And these are all from, most of them are from last year's book grant. And so there's a variety of different ways that you can use the books and teach science concepts and social studies concepts and anything cross-curricular, doing hands-on activities and all of that. So this one on your screen is all about pizza. And so this is actually one of our books that we had last year in the nutrition section that was called Pizza, A Slice of History. And so on your screen, there are 4 different teachers that loved this book and used it in their classroom. So I just wanted to show you all the different ideas and grade levels. So the main example that's in kind of like the photo negative kind of frames. This is a school, they were 4th grade, and they read the history of pizza. They found where Italy is on a map. They did some social studies. They learned about the schools in Italy and the food that they eat at the schools. They also learned where all of the ingredients came from. So looking at the supply chain, that the crust comes from wheat and the different livestock that we raise to process into the meats that we put on there. So they learned all of that. Then they worked with a local pizza shop in their town, and the owner came in and talked to them about the business aspect and all of the ins and outs of running and ordering the pizza supplies and all of that. And he also gave every student a little gift certificate to go, which was really awesome. The teacher had bought little chef hats for them, as you can see in the middle picture. And then the final activity for them was that they put all their knowledge to the test, and then they worked with the cafeteria staff to be able to make their own individual pizzas in the cafeteria and enjoy that and put it's like the cumulative activity at the very end. A second grade teacher also used this book in their classroom, and they did stuff about adjectives. How would you describe a pizza? It's chewy, it's cheesy, all of these different things. They worked more with language. They learned about the history of pizza and then had to write that in their own words. And they also wrote step-by-step instructions on how to build their own pizza. A third grade classroom learned about solar ovens and tied in the pizza idea with solar ovens and sustainability. And then another fourth grade class learned all about fractions. So they brought in the math aspect with using a pizza and looking at the different fractions and whatnot. So a lot of different ideas that you can use just with one single book at a variety of different grade levels. Another activity is on the left-hand side, we have a preschool class. They used books from the farming category that we had last year. Farm Boots, like I mentioned earlier, was one of them. And so they all brought in their own boots that they have at their own house. So some people don't have boots, and so they brought in Crocs to talk about how they do their chores in Crocs, or the outdoor, taking the trash out to the trash bin. So not all of your students are going to live on the farm and have those experiences, but you're still opening it up to show that people in houses and apartments and wherever you live do have tasks that they have to do and what shoe is appropriate. And so they got to show off their favorite, work shoes and whatnot. My Grandpa, My Tree, and Me that Lee mentioned earlier, they looked about tree life cycles, what they need to grow and survive. They helped transplant different trees. They identified the different parts of the tree, and they used walnuts from a walnut or from those trees, and then learned about the different types of foods that come from trees. So for example, the pecan trees, then they looked at all the different types of nuts. They compared and contrasted walnuts to pecans, and then they got these little tiny pecan pies and made them in the school cafeteria, and every student tried out the pecan pies. Logan's greenhouse, they germinated flowers. They made little flower gardens arrangements for Mother's Day. They had their local county ag literacy coordinator come in and help with the flower arrangement, and then they designed the little can. And then the last thing was they read the Potatoes for Pirate Pearl. They learned all about potatoes and the different types of snacks and foods that we can make with potatoes. They compared ingredients and recipes, and then they did a whole treasure hunt to fit in with the pirate ship theme of finding treasure. And they went around the gym and their classroom to find the treasure, which was a golden treasure for the golden potatoes of Lay's potatoes. So a lot of different things. I like this because this is showing how they used all the books in a variety of different ways. When you're doing these activities, you could do a couple activities for one of the books. You can do it like this, where there's several different books, several different activities. Maybe you're doing one activity a week. Maybe you're taking an entire week, one book every single day, or if you do only 2 books out of the category and get 10 copies or 7 copies of each, and you're reading one and then doing an activity for a couple days, reading the next book and doing an activity. The timeline doesn't matter as long as this is a springtime grant. So all of your stuff needs to be planned for when you get back from winter break. And however it works for your classroom, every classroom is so unique that it's just how are you using the books to teach about different aspects of agriculture. So you can see there's a variety of different things you could do with nutrition, all of that stuff. The other one is talking about nutrition. They're learning about different cultures. And then they actually made corn tortillas in their classroom and went through the entire process. And they had parents come in and help volunteer to work with the griddles and the hot plates and whatnot. So bringing in some of the families to help with that. And so you can see that's the nutrition aspect and trying new foods that maybe they didn't know, or seeing the process of making that. So that was a really cute one. And then I just have a couple more examples real quick. Kindergarten class that was looking at the farming category, and they were categorizing different farm animals. On the very left in the red, you can see they were categorizing if it's a farm animal or not a farm animal. In the middle, they were looking at the different age groups, so life cycle. For kids, obviously, they were using mom, dad, and baby, and identifying what the words are that we call each of those animals. And then they invited in, they worked with their local people to bring in a little petting zoo. And so the students got to see farm animals and pet them and all of that. And then they had to write a story about their favorite farm animal. And so you can see horses eat oats and grains, which is just so cute, working on their spelling and their lettering and all of that, and drawing a little picture. And then the very final one for the book grant is bringing in more of the science aspect and doing an actual activity to show how cross-curricular you can be. When you're reading books, you can still do science and bring that in, especially since a lot of science and social studies is being cut from our days. But in this one, they read a variety of different books from the soil category and first learned about soil and what it's made of and all of that. And then they did an activity where they were growing the same type of plant, but in a variety of different medium to see which medium worked best for that plant. They compared the data, they made observations, all of that. And this was within their ELA class when they were learning about reading. So they meshed reading, writing, and science all together, which is super important. So that was just a really awesome one that I wanted to include. Okay, on to the project grant. I know we're starting to, we said we were going to go over time. We're going to try to wrap this up really quickly. Again, the purpose is to integrate agriculture into your spring classroom curriculum. The materials that you request should be incorporated into some sort of project that you're going to do. Again, same with the book grants. The project could be a few days. It could be a month long where you're just visiting it, once a week and just collecting data. It depends on how it's going to fit into your classroom and what time you have. For this one, you're going to get up to $300 for materials. The deadline is exactly the same as the book grant, and the same with when we notify whether you have been awarded the grant or not will be on November 8th or before, depending on how quickly we can get through everything. The same important stuff as the book grant. You have to fill out the funding agreement. If you don't, then you just don't get the grant, even if you were awarded it. So you got to do that by December 6th. And again, with the final report, if you don't get that filled out, then I've got to put you on a blacklist, and we do not want that. The small print. All of your grants should focus on materials that can be used over like multiple years. So it can't be a one and done sort of thing. Nothing consumable, no plant seeds. We've done a lot in the past where we've provided seeds for school gardens, but gosh, don't we have big hopes and dreams for the year? And as we're all teachers, we know by the end of the year, you're like, gosh, I don't know how I was even going to fit that in the first place. And school gardens usually kind of die out over the summer. And so to prevent that, we will fund for the materials to build a school garden, but not the actual seeds or anything like that. No plants, no landscaping, things like that. No field trips, anything that's a one and done sort of thing. And we try not to fund for incubators because the chances are that your county somewhere, whether it's with high school FFA or especially with your IAITC coordinators, will be able to get you incubators. And so work with them and see what you can get. But all of that kind of stuff, we try not to fund for. Here's a couple of examples. I'm not gonna, you can come back and read these. All of the slides are gonna be on the website, and we'll show you that here in just a couple minutes where you can find this. I'm not gonna read through all of this stuff, but just some different ideas. Our 6th through 8th grade class, they did everything with aquaponics. The students set it up. They tested the water and did pH levels and all of that. There were fish living in the tank, and so bringing in life cycles and what it takes to care for a living creature and what they need in their environment, and how that water is the nutrients for the plants to grow right above it. So they grew a variety of different herbs that they could use then to harvest and make different foods in their classrooms. They talked about the pros and cons of man-made fisheries versus natural fish farms and whatnot. So all sorts of topics that they talked about. And this is a junior high level bringing that in. I will say this is something that may seem a little too high level for you, but we have seen this in classrooms from kindergarten and up. And so this is definitely something that you could utilize and teach your students in younger grades. The next one is all about, this is a librarian who did this, and she had a variety of different soil books already in the library that she would highlight. And then her project grant materials were all for the Soil SAM activity, and every class that visited had 2 Soil SAMs that they made, and they compared. They did all of these different things. Every time they visited the library, they would read more about a soil book and whatnot, and plants and germination, and compare it with their little Soil SAM characters. They named their Soil SAM characters, and you can see the class photo at the very end of the semester for all of the different classes that went in there. So that is that. A couple more just quickly. We have stuff on materials for compost bins. We've got a lot with compost bins. And so that's the top one with 6th grade. The bottom is a 5th to 6th grade using their project grant money to purchase a variety of different dry insect specimens for bees at the different life cycle stages. They got insect pins. They got the shadow box to put it in. They've got all sorts of different stuff so that students could have a visual as they were learning about bees and different pollinators and all this stuff. They had the visual already set up. That's something that could be used year after year to help students with learning about pollinators and whatnot. On the top right is about a 5th grade classroom that they used their grant money to purchase microscopes. These microscopes we have linked on the web page. These are something that we promoted all last year when we were going around talking about soil. They are awesome. They have a screen right there, super easy for students to use, to see. They're not like heavy duty like normal microscopes and cost hundreds of dollars. These are like $40 per microscope. You can plug them in and project it to your screen and do stuff together. In this case, the students were learning about soil, different plants, parts of plants and all of that kind of stuff. And so they use the microscopes to look at the anatomy of different flowers and the pollen and the anthers and stamen and all of that different stuff that they could identify, tying in with soil and plant growth and plant life cycles. A couple more for 3rd grade. They had permission from their school to have a little small greenhouse, so they used the money to purchase a small
Hey folks, this is Kevin. I'm not sure what happened to them, but they were there and now they're gone. So hopefully they'll come right back. Lee's calling me. Hey Lee, you're on live. What's up? So Lee's computer basically died, and so that's it. I'll wrap up for it. So again, folks, as you're looking at this, a number of project grants and book grants. The big deal with both our project and our book grants is that we need those in by the due date. So get us in by the due date. Get it in by the due date. If you have questions, please just reach out to reach out to us. You can shoot us an email, aitc@ilfb.org. That is the goal with that. With that, On behalf of Stephanie and Lee, with the dead computer in the other room, we'll just sign off now. If you have any questions, make sure that you send us an email, aitc@ilfb.org, and we look forward to getting those grant applications in the mail soon. This recording will go up as soon as they get it all put up today. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.